Hey everybody, I'm here today to discuss one of my all-time favorite film directors, Jim Jarmusch. Yeah, he's just been a great director ever since the early 1980s when he started with his debut film Permanent Vacation, which I've not seen, so I'm not going to talk about that one too much. But he's a great director. He really has always kind of shined as, to me, as something of a king of a certain grounded mysticism that so many directors from the 90s onwards would take take after. I mean, he's really laid out a foundation that was so unique. I mean, guys like Quentin Tarantino, Richard Linklater. I feel like the true blood of all this was in Jim Jarmusch, and he made so many great films. There are, and I'm going to cover a lot of my absolute favorites here, but a lot of these really have left a timeless mark. So I'll start with Stranger Than Paradise. And I think this is one of the greatest films I've ever seen on the topic of loneliness. I think whenever you retreat into loneliness for long enough of a time, you sort of start to just like almost desire the feeling of consistently being alone. It's almost like you don't want perhaps your own illusions to be shattered in any way. But once you get there, something is going to come around and shatter those illusions. And there's this contradiction that kicks in of like, I feel desperate to be around people again all of a sudden. Um, it's this weird kind of conflicting battle within of like, I want to be around people all the time and I don't want to be around people at all. So this story is just told like, and it sounds like very intense, but it's like the least intense movie ever. It's very minimalistic and chill out in so many ways, and it's really funny too. Like I think that Jarmusch really nailed a certain minimalistic style that really matches up with substance so naturally that it just feels like a complete experience all around. I would say the film I kind of walked out laughing a lot, but I feel very meditative by the time the film's over. I don't know. The interactions with the characters, there's just a lot of hilarious, goofy moments. The screenplay was just really, really great. I think Jim Jarmusch just nails naturalism in his dialogue so well, which lives up to his next film, Down by Law. That one's just as great, in my opinion. And honestly, the impact of that one reminds me a bit of a foundation of like you'd see in something like The Big Lebowski, where there's almost just like this, just it's all right, dude, kind of feeling to it. Like this is a darker film and way more dry than Lebowski. It's not, it doesn't really have the same kind of extent of hilarity to it, but it's just again a portrayal of minimalism as it's showing just characters and their detailed interactions. It's just people getting into kind of certain kind of trouble, but also kind of just finding something in themselves of just a balance, you could say. They all seem like they find something beautiful within their journey that's kind of weird ultimately, and it's kind of like mostly comes down to just the differences between the three characters, but they're also great and charming in their own ways, and they have like almost like fun within their trouble, which is like a slight maddening, but it's all very lighthearted and goofy in the end. It's a great film. Mystery Train, 1989. This is the first time Jarmusch really takes on that anthology structure, and he really does this like nobody else in this film. I think that his narrative sensibilities are some of the best ever, honestly, and this really shines in this film. This is my favorite film he's made up to this point in '89. Because I think he really took that minimalism, made it into something a little more colorful and bouncy within characters. This really feels close in spirit to what Tarantino would go on to do in the 90s. The whole film just feels like a puzzle piece. You never know exactly why these stories add up exactly, but the mystique of it is that it all happens in the same place. And it really revolves around like just like I love like the scenes with just the owner of the hotel just kind of just talking with all these mysterious people along the way, and just like there's all these differences, but it's like it's a day in the life for him. But for these characters, like this is kind of like their moment, you could say. And we're kind of in the moment of all these characters. And I think that this is a really good example of Jarmusch being more concerned with the tone than he is the plot. Like he's always been a tonal kind of director. At the end of the day, he's trying to make you feel something the way a poet would, rather than feel like you're really, like being driven by a plot and by just people being people. He kind of wants to get people in the light side of people in a lot of ways. He's a pretty light-hearted director at the end of the day. He's just like a little bit weird to do, but when you crack the shell, it's very light. Generally, the way you feel when you watch his stuff. But I love this movie. Mystery Train has a lot of like moody stuff. And the last scene has like a scene with Steve Buscemi and Joe Strummer from The Clash. I think that's one of his best cameos ever. Get into a hell of a crazy storyline in that act. But all the stories I think add up to something of dealing with like miscommunication in general. Feeling lonely, even when we're together, sometimes there are a lot of lonely moments where we just truly don't know, and there can be a lot of just like funny. I would just call them the kind of funny moods that come from that. But yeah, no, it's a blast from start to finish. And then you got Night on Earth, an even better anthology film. It's like he just kept honing his style and getting better and better. I love that about him. 1991, he made Night on Earth, This is a film that really gets into, yeah, like, again, that day in the life structure. But you get 5 stories, and they all are so different from each other. They're all about 20, 30-minute long segments of just simply characters in a taxi, just throughout different parts of the entire world. And you just kind of focus on the cab driver versus, not versus, but just kind of having this something build up with the passenger. You could say that it's something that just builds up into like something of a frantic, memorable story altogether. But it just deals with everything, honestly. From the light to dark. It really is I would say it's pretty near perfect movie. And the other day, I always walk out of that just really feeling something, having seen it. And then Dead Man's my favorite film by Jim Jarmusch, and it's hard to even begin with this one. I feel like this is just maybe one of the most effortlessly cool films I've ever seen in a lot of ways. I think that, it's just a story about bizarreness, and the extent of strangeness that can occur just to everyday people, when you're looking out for it in this kind of, like, very Native American kind of landscape that this film portrays here. And then, like, I really like how the story kind of just gets into how characters go through perilous situations, and they typically come out stronger, having it not killed them. In a sense, it's like they don't die from it; they literally come out like more beastly, like a bit of more of a warrior than they ever were before. And on a side note, this is completely different than any other Jim Jarmusch film. He's never made anything remotely like this. This is a little bit way further into the abstract than he's ever been before. Like I said, like he still retains his poetic outlook, but this is a lot more into the realm of abstract philosophy in general, and just the nature of death. Like I think he really explores that in a really fascinating way. That really ranks up there with like Bergman, Seventh Seal and stuff. It's a really perfect movie. The screenplay is just so memorable the entire way through, from start to finish. Johnny Depp's perfect in it. It's tied with Ed Wood for my favorite movie he's ever been in. And probably this is the end of the day, because this is just, man, the more I think about it, the better it gets. And you got Neil Young doing the soundtrack, Iggy Pop. Man, this might, like this is one of the best movies ever made. So definitely my favorite Jim Jarmusch film. It'll probably go. It really does rank as one of at least the top 50 films I've ever seen. I haven't sat down and made a list properly in forever. I'm very much of a scattered guy, so it would be, although like the ratings are the same, it would be very consistent. But anyways, yeah, that's perfect. Never saw Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai, but I want to eventually, because I know that's a loose remake of Les Samurai that came out in the 60s. I love that movie, but yeah, I have a feeling Jarmusch would definitely be right in tune with that kind of dryness, though. So that makes sense that he would remake it. 2003, he made Coffee and Cigarettes. This is a really fun experiment. I really enjoyed this one. It's a lot of heart and enthusiasm behind all those different stories behind it from start to finish. And it's ultimately just like a vehicle. Like you're just trying to kind of like, realize that life is kind of quirky at the end of the day through these situations and moments. A lot of great themes over these stories, and the characters are really interesting. Maybe it's a little bit repetitive at times, but it still is a great movie at the end of the day. Broken Flowers is also a fantastic anthology film. That one's more on the heartbreak side of Jarmusch, which I think is just as great as like Mystery Train and Night on Earth, because this is Bill Murray. Kind of reminds me of his Lost in Translation character, but now back at home. And kind of a lot of the heartbreak he was enduring, kind of building up to this moment of Lost in Translation. But yeah, I love this movie, man. This is really a fascinating story of just going back to different significant people from your past and kind of like how they go. Sometimes it goes better, sometimes it goes worse. You never know where it's going to go. It's like that's kind of the ultimate mystery box in the end, I really love how the film just hones in on those differences and how they influence him in the present day. It does leave a significant impact to him. So it's like sometimes people leave a mark like once there, always there. So like you see him now and you hope it gets better the older you get. But the movie kind of explores both sides of the realm. Paterson, I will say that I argued that was my favorite Jarmusch film when I first saw it. Now it's worn off me just a little bit, but it's still a great movie. I think it's because I can relate so much to Adam Driver's character at this point. And I'm like, okay, dude's got a, he's like, it's kind of portraying something of a simplicity in life that I'm kind of got my way, and he's kind of got his, and he's settled into a deep relationship and stuff. So that's a little different than how I'm doing things right now. So maybe it'll grow on me once I kind of get there. But now I look at it and I'm like, it's just not as compelling to me as someone who's just in the deep depths of loneliness right now. So I'm kind of going on that radar. So that's just, I'm just following it, man. I don't know. Gimme Danger, man. Oh yeah, that's a good documentary that he made about the band The Stooges. And honestly, they're one of the most just badass, just pure rock and roll bands ever. Iggy Pop's so cool, man. And they had 3-album streak from 69 to 73. That was just awesome. And it's just cool. They got better and better with every album, honestly. So you can only take it so far until you get the crashing in the end. So Yeah, Jim Jarmusch. He's a memorable director. If you haven't seen any of his stuff or have, yeah, I highly recommend just diving into him. If you're looking for a good piece of minimalism, like they can be challenging at first in a way, but once you kind of like get into where his films are taking you, they're just really relaxing and charming, feel good, yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah, highly recommend it.